my delighted pleasure to introduce Maria Entraigues-Abramson. Maria is a well-known singer. She's been involved in the film industry for years before she became involved in flight. She's a pilot. She's an advocate for longevity. She is an entrepreneur in the sense of being that advocacy for longevity. She serves as the Global Outreach Coordinator for SENS Research Foundation and is a board member of the International Longevity Alliance. So I welcome Maria in joining us at Humanity Plus and all of our decades of love and passionate advocacy for super longevity. Welcome, Maria. Thank you.
Hi, Natasha and everyone. We're all wondering how this global crisis will affect the fast-growing longevity industry. I'm personally very worried about it. Let me share some information and some personal thoughts about it. So a pandemic is sweeping the globe, infecting millions and killing over 500,000 people as of today. And that number will keep climbing, unfortunately. These are terrible times. Over 11 million people have been infected. Many right now are suffering a great deal, isolated in a hospital, needing a ventilator to stay alive. We're all very anxious to know how long this will take, waiting for scientists who work at a record-breaking pace to bring us a drug or a vaccine. In reacting to this pandemic and in a pretty much coordinated way, the entire world has taken all kinds of extreme measures to contain this problem. And I wouldn't expect less in front of such a threat. Our health is at stake, our life is at stake. Millions of people sad and sitting locked down at home. Basically, whole countries have been shut down and millions of businesses may never open again. World economies are going down, all in response to a disease. It seems like fixing this problem is the world's #1 priority right now. Why is that? You must be thinking, Maria, it is pretty obvious why, because this virus can get us all very sick. And not only that, it can kill us. So what do you expect? Of course, we will close down the whole world if we have to. Yeah, that's fair enough. We all agree that getting sick and even worse, dying of it is not something we take lightly. We don't accept disease easily. And in fact, we fight it with all we have. But do we really? Maybe not always. Life is very uncertain and we don't know when or how we will die. But what we know for sure is that if we won't be killed by something else other than old age, we will eventually 100% sure die of an old age, an age-related disease, you know what I'm saying, or simply call it aging. And yes, we're all infected by it, just like in a pandemic. But we still don't categorize aging as a medical problem. We don't fight aging as we fight cancer or heart disease. Aging touches all of us, and just like in a pandemic, makes us very sick and kills us. The only difference is that in a pandemic, we could be lucky and be okay. With aging, there's a way out. Not yet, at least. The SARS-CoV-2 pandemic is both an immediate pressing danger and a call to action. It demonstrates the critical need for better long-term strategies for addressing threats to human life. It is logical that we spend so many resources on attacking this enemy, developing a drug and or a vaccine or both that directly impairs the virus, that we should also look at a defensive plan and strengthen ourselves, especially the elderly. Policymakers need to understand that this approach will be useful not only for this virus, but for a lot more virus to come, which they will. And also for endless health problems that are overwhelming the healthcare system today. At SENS Research Foundation, we're working on some of these ways that would make us less vulnerable to this virus and to disease in general. Some of those things are restoring the immune system through regeneration of the thymus, which Greg Fay also is making really progress on, and also he reversed aging through it. Purging senescent cells for younger lungs, using senolytic drugs, rejuvenating the signaling environment, addressing senescence-associated inflammation, which is another big deal, triggering self-destruction of mutation-prone cells, transplant of mitochondria to rescue critical lung cells. Those are all projects we have at our organization going on now, and in association with other organizations, extramural, intramural, both. You can read in detail about the research on our website. We have a new section called COVID-19 and Aging, with a nice introduction by Edward James Olmos. COVID-19 marks the return of a very old and familiar enemy. Nothing other than aging killed more humans than infectious diseases, not even natural disasters or war. So this is not the first pandemic in history. For example, malaria has been attacking humanity for thousands of years, and even though a lot less people die of it today, it still kills about 500,000 people a year. Over the past 1,000 years, epidemics have been mass killers on a scale unimaginable today, even now during COVID-19. For example, the plague of Justinian in the 6th century killed about 50 million people. Perhaps that was half of the global population at the time. The Black Death of the 14th century may have killed about 200 million people. Smallpox, about 300 million people in this century, 20th century alone. Some 50 to 100 million people died in the famous Spanish flu in 1918. More than the death toll of World War I, that was, which by the way was happening at the same time. So yeah, you know, this is not the worst crisis humans had to face. 1918 the Spanish flu infected 1 in every 3 people on the planet. HIV, another virus, a pandemic that is still with us, and we still don't have a vaccine for it, has killed about 32 million people and infected something like 75 million people, and it's still adding every day, unfortunately. These numbers are shocking, but in the not so distant past, they were a fact of everyday life. At the dawn of the 19th century, global life expectancy was just 29 years. Can you imagine? But back then, so many of us died in infancy from disease, during childbirth, or from an infection after a simple wound. We're in a much better position now. We have conquered many infectious diseases also. Or some of them, at least, we manage well, like the HIV virus. The problem is we have not cured one age-related disease, and immunosenescence is one of them. In COVID-19, the damage caused by aging is the largest factor in determining who lives and who dies. The need for our mission to address aging as a medical emergency has never been clearer. Now the question is, will this pandemic help opening eyes about how important fighting aging is? You know, just when the longevity industry started becoming a reality, when we have finally gotten far enough with the research so that there's no more question that the process of aging can be reversed, when a growing number of startups were forming like never before, just when after being called crazy for years, finally we started receiving the validation of the scientific field. And just when our field was finally taking off strong, we got hit by COVID-19. So we are worried. So now the question is, will this crisis be a setback? Could it actually be a catalyst to our industry? Will this pandemic spark more curiosity about understanding the biology of aging? It's time. And again, it's very early to tell, but let's talk about it a little bit. Now, experts speculate that the post-COVID-19 world could be less global and less urban, that the pandemic will reverse the trends of globalization and urbanization. We could see a reduction in international cooperation and the increased likelihood of international conflict, which it's already happening. In addition, we could also see a reverse in the trends of cities growing as people move to more spacious and less crowded places. the economic effects of a less global and urban world may not be positive. For the past 4 decades, globalization and urbanization have been two of the world's most powerful drivers. Global trade increased from 40% to 60%, from under 40% actually. The number of people living in cities more than doubled to over 40 billion people today, more than half the world's population living in cities. COVID-19 could reverse both of these trends, increasing the distance between countries and among people. A world that is less global, is less and less urban, would also be less prosperous, less stable, and less fulfilling, I would say. The urbanization would harm economic growth because cities generate enormous scale economies and have proved to be remarkably effective incubators of creativity and innovation, which could affect directly the advancement of research for breakthrough technologies like rejuvenation biotech, for example. At the same time, and like Indian author Arundhati Roy said, the pandemic is a portal. Could this be true? Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine a new world. Obviously, the way the world will be hit by this pandemic today will be very different than how it got hit by the Spanish flu in 1918, for example, because we are a much different world today. We're much stronger. I want to think that this pandemic could be the portal that we needed to advance our mission, a gateway between one world and the next. Think of World War II, for example, and all the amazing new technology we created. We made decades of progress in only a few years. That's what we're capable of. And imagine what we can do today. That was in the 40s, right? I think this crisis could be a great opportunity, and we should try to use it as a teaching moment. Many of the spaces comprised in science and technology, including private projects and government agencies, have been seriously affected, leading to the slowdown or the halt of a number of important projects. I experienced that personally with the research study my husband and I were running on NAD biomarkers. We're still struggling with it, but starting to move again. But this has also opened new lines of research, both at the government and private levels. It is possible that the pandemic will improve scientific communication or create new ways for it. Well, it's definitely happening already. For instance, a lot of information is being made available on preprint servers and is getting broken down on social internet platforms and sometimes in the media before even entering formal peer review. Scientists are reviewing, editing, analyzing, and publishing manuscripts at record speeds and in large numbers. This intense communication seems to be an unprecedented level of collaboration among scientists and unprecedented efficiency too. This is all great stuff. A response like this is what we need to make our mission happen. And of course, this joint response that is happening now is to fight this distant enemy because it is considered an emergency. And unfortunately, aging is not. But maybe all these changes will lay down a foundation in a new structure that could help advance our mission soon, or at least sooner. The US is working right now really hard to create a vaccine. The search for vaccines often ends in failure. And it's scary to think about that. And the successful efforts have always taken years, like a decade. So it seemed improbable, and if not impossible, that researchers who began working on vaccines for the new virus in January could discover something so elusive and do it so quickly. But because we're working at an unprecedented speed and pushing so hard like we can do, it seems it is possible this would happen. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert, said it is not impossible that we will have a vaccine by the middle of the winter of 2020. The World Health Organization organized a telethon to raise $8 billion from 40 countries to support rapid development of vaccines, and announced this development. I think they called the Solidarity Trial in March 18th, and by April 21st, they already had 100 countries participating. The Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovation, CEPI, put together a $2 billion worldwide fund for rapid investment and development of vaccines, and recently indicated that a vaccine may be available by early 2021. That's incredible. There are science movements. For example, the Open COVID Pledge, asking different industries to release their data and intellectual property rights during the pandemic. And several of the tech giants joined the pledge, like Amazon, Facebook, Hewlett-Packard, IBM, Microsoft, among others. The National Institute on Aging has new research projects to understanding why the elderly are more affected by COVID-19, and projects focusing more on the biology of aging. Knock, knock, hello. It is time. This is very exciting, really. In 2017, the International Longevity Alliance, of which, like Natasha said, I'm part of the board of directors, put together an advocacy campaign and a petition to the WHO. And at the time, it was very successful. They added to their work program a commitment to advance the global strategy and action plan on aging and health. They said that ensuring healthy aging was an urgent challenge in all countries. They used the terms healthy life expectancy, and they also said to live not just long, but also healthy lives, and that their goal was to reduce the number of older adults, 65 plus years, who are care dependent by 15 million. Not much changed, I have to say, so far, which is disappointing. But now, through a joint initiative with Open Longevity and the International Longevity Alliance, we sent another petition to the WHO asking for open anonymized medical data on COVID-19 and aging related risk factors. We'll see what they reply, but something could come out of this. Another thing that I find positive for projects in the US, at least, is that as the crisis got worse and traveling became more difficult, investors pulled back a lot from investing overseas and are now more likely to revert to more investing closer to home. Also, in my interaction with startups dedicated to repairing aging and their founders, apart from the logical slowdown because of social distancing and not being able to work in the labs and meet, etc., I so far haven't encountered any hesitation from either parties regarding going forward as planned. If anything, I feel more energy is building up, which is how we feel at Sense too. In terms of the philanthropic world, which affects us directly since we are a nonprofit, things are still looking good. And I've been reading through some studies, and it seems like donors in general are so far not reducing their donations or planning to. Yesterday I was reading a study by Fidelity Charitable that was just conducted and revealed that 25% of donors, in fact, plan to increase their donations and 45% plan to maintain their giving levels. The results also said that most donors do not plan to shift their giving to different organizations in light of the pandemic. They will stay the course by continuing to support their favorite nonprofits because they feel that's when they need the money the most right now. And so that's good news. And it is too early to tell, again, where all this will lead. But I think many trends that are relevant to life extension, futurism, transhumanism, etc., already underway are being accelerated by the impact of this crisis. This is what I see being in the field. For example, the digital world with the rise of digital behaviors such as remote working, learning, telemedicine, what we're doing right now, etc. This acceleration is bringing these technological advancements fast, and economies will take time to recover, but will likely emerge changed. Hopefully forced into the inevitable next version of the world that would have otherwise taken much longer to happen. But I'm an optimist, of course. I find this encouraging, and I'm very curious to see where we're going to be in 2 years or so. I actually have a short story. I was having problems with my internet connection, and I had technicians coming to my house, like 6 or 7, and they were not able to fix it. And so I kept calling them, and I got to talk to someone very high ranked in the company. And he said, look, I'm going to be very honest with you. We're just overwhelmed with our system. We were not ready for this. We have to upgrade every single piece of hardware we have, and we're working super fast, as fast as we can every day to do that. We cannot service everyone with what we have. We're making these changes that we were going to make in 5 or 10 years. We're making it happen now. So we're traveling into the future. So that was a perfect example. And he said, but the good news is we're going to end up being the most modern and best company in the country. So something interesting I noticed that David Sinclair was saying the other day is that people are listening to scientists a lot more, paying more attention to them. Usually the general public doesn't care what scientists think, but definitely they're doing that today. I think because the media is paying a lot more attention to science too. So the public is getting more into health stuff. And I think the pandemic has led them to get interested in learning about disease and what they can do to fight it. And indirectly, that is immersing them into wanting to know more about selfie. And also they see directly that this infection is associated to aging, and they're gonna obviously think more about aging and disease, which, they never put together, those two things. Yeah, I think the pandemic will leave a lasting indentation in the world's economy, and it will definitely cause changes that will teach us a lot of valuable lessons too. And I think we can capitalize on many things here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your knowledge. The first question, it's more about your personal experience. So I would like to ask you, how did the pandemic affect your career as a singer?
Oh, 100% affected in a negative way. Almost nothing is going on, obviously, only just a little bit of recording that you can only do at home. So for those of us who have a little studio at home, we can do some work like that, but it's almost completely zero happening.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. The entertainment industry has been one of the one hit the heaviest by the pandemic, unfortunately. And another question that I wanted to ask you, that was coming from the community, and I think it was very pertinent to your talk and to some of your points. So someone's asking, what were you worried about a year ago, and what do you think you'll be worried about in a year from now? And then he or she concludes by saying, worrying about aging is somewhat of a luxury item depending on condition, in my humble opinion. I've reported.
Someone said that it's a luxury.
Someone said it's not. Perhaps it's my point as well, but I just reported the question.
It's a common thing we hear. And we'll respect that.
You have 3 minutes.
But I was worried about.
Sorry.
Okay. A year ago, I was worried about getting more funding so that we can make have our cures happening sooner. And a year from now, I think the obvious answer is I want to make sure that this pandemic is under control. I mean, I could expand on my answer, but I know I have 2 minutes. And in terms of aging being a luxury, well, it depends. I think we're all different. I think we all worry about disease, and whoever asked that, I'm pretty sure you worry about disease. I'm pretty sure you don't want to get cancer. If I ask you, do you want to get Alzheimer's when you're 70, you probably will tell me no. If I ask you if you want to get it when you're 80, you'd probably say no. I don't know. I imagine you would say no. If I ask you if you want to get it at 90, you probably say no too. So that's what aging is, basically. It's getting sick. So it's not a luxury if you see it like that.
Thank you. Last question. We still have 3 minutes, so we still have some time.
Okay.
How do we get media and art to be more positive about longevity in the future? How can we get media and art to be more positive about longevity in the future? Most of what media and art produce are dystopian views that apparently sell very well. So
I know that sells. I think maybe several things. One thing would be obviously if we could educate more people about what this is and that how this is not science fiction. And the thing is that for so long, it's been science fiction. And I think humans, that's what they have, and they're conditioned to that. So they prefer to be entertained by these ideas and just leave it at that, and then think, well, it's impossible, so I'm not going to get excited. So the more information that is scientifically validated, that is out there, that we can show people that this now is changing, that it's not like it used to be. This is really happening now. I think people are going to get more excited. And then media is already shifting. They are already shifting into a little bit of a more positive thing, or at least even if they don't say, oh, this is a great idea, they just leave it out there more up in the air without throwing at you the completely negative thing they used to do with the movies. Yeah, I think it's shifting. We are actually working on a documentary now with a team of people who are Hollywood people that want to do something very positive about it. So the more science comes out and the more progress we made, everything goes together. And I think, yeah, it's gonna get viewed better. Yeah.